Today we're going to continue with the reading of the novel that is called Drop and Roll. Several episodes back, you can hear the first section, which has beautiful cover art by Lydia with an owl on it. The cover art here is some desert mountains in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where some of this takes place. So are we ready to record this next part of Drop and Roll?
Oh, yes, we are. We're all set. Rock and roll. Drops and roll. Sorry.
Well, maybe I should just go ahead and start reading.
Yep, go ahead.
The story ends around, the first section ends around May the 15th. The painting was called Collective Invention, painted in 1934. Now we switch to this second section, which we wrote May 16th. He nodded at her and she nodded back. The painting wasn't necessarily her idea, it was his. At the time he felt at peace. He felt he had nothing to fear. Maybe he was experiencing a final narcissistic impulse until he looked at the fish merged with the woman's legs. Not an ordinary feminine attire, he would say. The whole thing looked like a stillborn mermaid. Soon it had gotten worse. The realization of his loneliness struck him suddenly, struck him hard. Her painting created his illusion. His illusion created her reality. And at the same time, the painting was supposed to be surreal, a maddening mystique inside a modern high-rise. Only now he had no one. It wasn't her fault he was lonely. She gave him everything he wanted. She gave him everything, except herself. They went to his favorite restaurants and bars. They drank infused vodkas. She didn't even like vodka. They ate herring and sour cream, stuffed mushrooms, fried potatoes. He always ordered salads. She hated salads. He humored her and ordered cafe affogato from time to time, only to have his kindness thrown back in his face with the forced "Merci, mother," a maddening maze of dead ends. That's the best way to sum up this Garden of Eden. "Hey, what do you guys want for dinner?" somebody asked them. "I drink beer," he said. "I don't drink at work," she said. It was he said, she said situation. "I want strawberry, watermelon, and grape," she whispered. He nodded and thought, "Darling, life doesn't give you what you want. Life only gives you what you deserve. But then again, there's God. God gives you exactly what you need." Moments like this always made him think of Daniel in the lion's den, where he was walking in victory and she was sitting in defeat. Lion King, behind every great man is a great woman. We just let the men think they rule the world. Always men misplace their keys. They never know the kids' birthdays. They forget their own mother's birthday. They buy the wrong flowers. It's a miracle that a man can get out of the door in the morning with his socks matching. Daniel in the lion's den. She warned him that if he left his socks in the den one more time, then she was throwing them away. So far, she had thrown away 3 pairs of socks. It was a sock war, and he thought he was winning. I wonder who planted all the knives in the Garden of Eden. I kept getting cut, but red flowers bloomed from the blood that seeped into the earth. Gardening was great because murder was wrong. She once saw that written on a poster. "When I smoke weed, I go dark," she said. He looked at her naked body. She was beautiful. "What do you want?" he asked. "Revenge," she answered. "For what?" "Being born," she answered. "So now we're adding self-pity to our list of frailties?" he asked. She didn't even answer. It was a rhetorical question. He fired back, "You go dark? Is that your defense for living your lies and sins? You aren't responsible for what you do? Of course you are. I'll teach you to own up to all that once I've done and all those you've hurt." He held her tightly and pressed a mirror up to her pretty face. "What is it you want?" she asked. "I want to bed several women at the same time," he answered. "I never saw a ladies' man who didn't have a guilty conscience." She nodded. He nodded back. "I already have a guilty conscience. I might as well have a threesome, too." They played this game again. Tiny bit more complicated than checkers, a little bit less complicated than chess. She pushed the mirror away and thought, of course there will be mirrors and ties and beautiful beds in the theater of Mada. She knew what he was thinking before he even thought it. That's what it takes to play chess with this man. She stood up and walked across the room, turned and asked, "So I will be an actor in your play of perversions?" "No, you will be an agent. You will find the amuse-bouche and invite them to the dinner theater. That's your role." "And what if I don't agree?" He remained silent. "I understand myself more when I take time in silence. It can be really redemptive." "What?" she asked. He didn't answer. "Do you meditate?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. "Well, this is fortuitous," he smiled. She kept looking at him. "That means lucky," he said. "I know what it means," she said. "I know you know," he said. It seemed like she had tried to constantly create some trouble, any trouble. Okay, sometimes people do create trouble, people like her. It's like they find themselves in an eternal state of conflict. There's always something for them, but not him. No, not him. He wouldn't have to push against himself. When something was a little too heavy, he stayed in it, in this fire of purification. His trauma was a very profound vehicle for awakening. She glanced at the bookshelf. Dumas, Hemingway, Tolstoy, Proust. Her eyes fixed on one title, 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. That was what it felt like being with Mada. Dead ends, tunnels, airports, trains, always on the move. She was tired of his dreary talk about trauma, his or hers. She poured herself a drink. "Go on," she said. He is a picture of Dorian Gray, she suddenly thought. Scared of the wood and afraid of the universe. I'd cut him, but I don't use knives anymore. That was true. She was into gardening now because murder was wrong. "Let me tell you what happened," he said finally, and continued. "If I drink a beer or two, I go crazy." He's got problems, she thought, listening to whatever gibberish he was narrating. He's legitimate crazy. Judgment without effort was all the death sentence he needed. He agreed to go to therapy, individual and group. They had to fill out forms. Occupation. She wrote saboteur. He wrote bum, poet, and part-time piano player. List a problem that you would like to work on in the group session. She wrote, "I'm not present most of the time." He wrote, "Can't sleep." "How long have you had these disturbing thoughts?" She wrote, "Since Chinese New Year of the Rabbit." He wrote, "I prefer not to say." The first therapy sessions worked out to everyone's satisfaction. She's such fun, he thought, always joking and never too tired, not bored with my stupidity. Accidentally, she had achieved a purpose she hadn't expected to achieve. It all started way back just prior to when COVID changed people's lifestyle. Lots of people had time on their hand. There are many ways to be alone, after all. We achieve what we need, not what we want. 29 May 2023. Numerically, that worked out to be 5, because 2 and 9 is 11, and May is the 5th month. So 5 and 2 is 7. 23 would be 2 and 3 is 5. Ergo, add it all up, 5. Trapped at home, time was on their hands. Trapped at home, time was on their wrists. Mata tried to tie her up, tie her down with as many expectations. He wanted her to be dressed and ready to go. She took off the expensive wristwatch he had given her. She preferred not to know what time it was. It started so innocently as she lured him into the deep end of life. "Let's go fishing," she announced. He felt the hook in his throat. He coughed a little bit, trying to clear his throat. "Don't touch your face," the announcements warned. The official reports from the polygraph tests were back. She knocked on his cell door to go over the information with him, as if he was a neighbor living a few doors down. "Come in," he said. She unlocked the cell door with her set of master keys. "I see you are talking," she said. "Well, it's not good. Your answers line up with the dark triad, and you were sweating a lot, so we noted that on your file." He stared at her blankly, then looked at how she was dressed: a slim skirt, a white sheer blouse, pearls, heels. The scent of her perfume drifted towards his face. "That's not fair," he thought to himself. He tried to look intelligent. He really did. Yet he couldn't keep it up any longer. "Why can't you go out for a drink with me?" he asked her. "Help me to help you," she said, and continued. "You go around in life because you're afraid of your own heart." He coughed. A moment passed, during which they never broke eye contact, because when people are drowning in the river, you can't help them if you're in the river with them. Then came a feeling of sick loneliness. To him, he didn't know how to set up the boundaries this time. "Have a drink with me?" he asked. This seemed to amuse her, and she chuckled. He smiled. She looked at his smile and said, "I always wanted to be a dentist." "Why?" he asked. "Because I like it when people smile," she answered. His infidelity was finally driven underground. She pushed the buttons on his car radio. You can't build anything on smiles and a tattered heart, she thought to herself, but out loud she said, "Drive faster." "The world is on fire and no one can save me but you," Chris Isaak announced. "The world is not on fire. I have no intention of saving you. I can't even save myself," he said. She kept changing the stations, making him nervous. "Would you just relax and sit back and enjoy the ride?" Oye Como Va by Santana came on. He drummed against the steering wheel like it was a set of bongos. He shot a glance at her. She was tying a long scarf around her hair, and the ends flew in the wind. She punched the buttons again and settled on Buena Vista Social Club, Chan Chan Chan, imagining they were in Cuba and drinking mojitos. He decided to school her in some history. "Do you know anything about Cuba or the Cuban Missile Crisis?" She ignored him and looked out of the cactus landscape of New Mexico. She recalled that once he gave her a sermon on the great white shark. "What's that?" she asked. His prologue to the sermon was a short announcement about why she was so unhappy. He enjoyed explaining to others what was wrong with their lives. "You're unhappy because you surround yourself with small fish. You play with little fish." Then came his sermon on how she needed to find a great white shark to chase, how the chase would bring her some satisfaction. She leaned back in the car seat as she traveled across the desert with her shark man. How long can he stay out of the water, she wondered. The next page is missing. Do you want to know how he met the devil and made the deal? Well, they met at a chess club, and they liked each other's moves from the very beginning. Come on, baby, cure my hangover, he said. Not until after I light my weed, she answered. He was one of those kids who falls under mama's, baby, papa's, maybe definition. Always hurt. And hurt people, you know what I mean? Lost cause beyond repair. Stupendous achievement. The waves of nausea were thick in the desert. She listened to his story as he drove across Death Valley. Excuses, lies, rationalizations, more metaphors for nothing. She threw her empty paper cup out of the car window. Don't litter, he scolded her. Oh, where are we going? She asked. Does it matter? All the roads lead to the same place with you. The sign they passed read, no gas for the next 50 miles. He asked her, do you ever think that maybe we're aliens from the same spacecraft? Something went wrong or right? Doesn't matter. And that's why we're together? What do you mean we're aliens? We're not aliens. You're a man from another city and I'm a woman. Yes, something went wrong. Something crashed. A car, a marriage, a train, a business deal. We fell down, but we got back up to go on to the next disaster, where the people had beautiful bodies, but different faces. She saw from the car window a weathered sign next to a little family of cactus, surrounded by a white picket fence. The sign said, Field of Hope. They sped by. The day evaporated with the heat, and they found themselves alone in the desert night. Moonflowers bloomed as they found a place to stretch out. The car was nearby and made her feel safe. It was large and made of metal. The air was dry and no hope of anyone for miles. He remembered when he tried to sleep on the hard cot in the holding cell. His mind raced from place to place. She handed him a cold beer from the cooler. The sound from the pop top startled him. He felt bored of her, whatever it was that she spoke of. He knew what she was going to say before she said it. He just wished her to stop. Eventually, at some point, he began to wonder, is there not any better woman out there? He started looking. Seek and ye shall find, the good book says. Only in this case, the context was different. But in cases like this, context is everything. Besides, it wasn't just boredom, it was more of a defense against the world. So he kept on dreaming and leaving important things unsaid. Deprived of excitement, his battle was lost, and all for the want of a horseshoe nail. Today is the summer solstice, she announced. So what? He declared. That means it will feel like today will never end. Well, that's how every conversation feels with you. He kept his eye on the road ahead. She leaned back to reach a notebook in the back seat. She liked to take notes and write down her observations about this and that. She wrote, Tomorrow begins the descent into darkness. I'm so tired of the infernal sunshine. I need shadows, falling leaves, relentless rain. He's being so recalcitrant, so annoying. I can't wait for this trip to be over. With her pencil, she drew some dark rain clouds and wrote on one, pressure. On another one, she wrote, regret. Nothing worth remembering, he thought to himself as he stretched out on the bench in his cell. Will they come with a blade or electric shock? He had no way of knowing. They were watching him, that's all he could be sure of, studying him like a bug or a butterfly pinned in a box. The data collecting machines hummed through the empty hallway. It was night, he surmised, and he preferred the bench to the bed.